Roughly 57 weeks after John McCain got clobbered by Barack Obama in the last presidential election, the most interesting Kremlinology question in all of Washington is still, who's the leader of the Republican Party? Is it Dick Cheney? Is it Michael Steele? Is it Sarah Palin? John Boehner, maybe? That lady with the weird-looking teabag hat? Who is the standard bearer of the post-George Bush, post-John McCain Republican Party? How about John McCain? We have been seeing a lot more of Senator McCain recently, and now Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina has proclaimed to Politico.com that John McCain, quote, is now the de facto leader of the Republican Party. Take this with a grain of salt, since Lindsey Graham has been paunch to John McCain's John for a few years now. But after a year and a month of collective Republican Party soul-searching, John McCain does appear to be the party's choice, at least for now. Senator McCain is taking the lead on his party's opposition to health reform, for example. To that end, he introduced the first Republican amendment on health reform. It would have shipped the whole bill back to committee and stripped out all the provisions designed to slow the growth of Medicare costs.
I will eagerly look forward to hearing from the authors of this legislation as to how they can possibly achieve $500 billion in cuts without impacting existing Medicare programs negatively and eventually lead to rationing of health care in this country.
Stirring stuff from the man who campaigned on a $1.3 trillion Medicare and Medicaid cut just last year.
I don't know what the deal was, but we'll find out what the deal was. Just like the deals were cut with all these other organizations, which is full of lobbyists. I can't walk through the hallway here without bumping into one of their lobbyists.
Does the Senator want to hear the deal?
If the Senator keeps interrupting, he is violating the rules of the Senate. I thought he would have learned them by now.
So says the man whose presidential campaign was run by so many lobbyists, the Straight Talk Express could have been sponsored by Gucci loafers. Senator McCain has also taken the lead for his party on opposing global warming legislation. In the Senate, the global warming bill is basically tripartisan. It's being written by Democrat John Kerry, Independent Joe Lieberman, and Republican Lindsey Graham. According to Senator McCain, quote, their start has been horrendous. Obviously, they're going nowhere. Now, decrying cap-and-trade legislation, calling it cap-and-tax, for example, is a fairly mainstream Republican position, but it is a really difficult position for Senator John McCain, because John McCain himself advocated a cap-and-trade plan when he ran for president last year, and he co-sponsored climate change legislation 3 times during the Bush years. Senator McCain is the GOP's latest solution to the leadership problem that seems to have befuddled the party all year long. That said, he is also probably the single most awkward choice they could have made on health care, on the issue of lobbyists, on climate change, on most of the big political issues the party's facing right now. Joining us now is Democratic strategist Chris Kofinas. Chris, thanks very much for your time tonight.
Good evening, Rachel.
As a Democratic strategist, give me Democratic pluses and minuses to John McCain as the new de facto leader of the Republican Party.
Well, the pluses are, from the Democrats' perspective, you have a 72-year-old Republican senator who ran for president, lost by 7 points, is clearly conservative. It clearly changed in a lot of dramatic ways from the maverick that was, pretty beloved by a lot of Americans, including a lot of Democrats. So, I mean, the pluses are he is probably just a terrible spokesperson for the party if they want to go in a new direction. In terms of the minuses, he still has a lot of gravitas, a lot of credibility with the media. He's able to get a lot of attention, as we know. So he's a powerful voice. But unfortunately, that voice is really kind of, I would say, out of touch with where a lot of voters are today.
In terms of talking about his age, him being 72 now, do you raise that because it's unlikely that he would be mounting another campaign for president at the age of 76?
Well, I raise it, not to be cute about it, but, we're operating, I think, in a different realm. Part of that is, with President Obama, he's fresh, he's charismatic, he's new, and that was part of, I think, the attraction the American voters had to him. And so the Republicans, in order to compete with that, I think need to find, if you will, their Obama. They clearly don't have that. They have anything but. So going back to the future, if you will, to appeal to John McCain as somehow being your leader doesn't really give you the ability to appeal to that moderate voters, those independent voters that are critical. So it's not a good selection, but it kind of gives you an idea, I think, of where the Republican Party is today.
See, I sort of feel like that might be a plus in terms of at least the way the Republican Party is looking at John McCain right now. I think they're trying to convince the country that Barack Obama was an out-of-the-box choice and that he's turned out to be bad for the country, is the case they're always making. And so essentially the Republican Party's message right now is get back in the box, get back in the box. Let's go with something that is traditional, that is familiar, that maybe is even something that we have seen before. Let's go with last year's model. There's been too much new done in this country with all of its connotations about everything about Barack Obama.
Well, you know, the last year's model lost by 7 points and brought us Sarah Palin, so not necessarily a lot of good pluses there. You know, I think the Republican strategy, I think you're right about that. That is their kind of strategy. The problem with that is I think it misreads where the electorate is. I'm not saying that everything is hunky-dory and there's not a lot of questions, concerns about, you know, the Democrats and what we're doing right now. But the Republican strategy basically is to go out there and say we're all wrong and basically ignore the fact that their 8 years that they controlled the White House, as well as the 6 years they controlled the Congress, put us in a position that forced this administration to do some pretty dramatic and significant things. So they don't have that policy vision, that leadership that I think will attract voters. They may win some seats, and there's no question about that, but in terms of reshaping their party and redirecting their party, I just don't see how they do with John McCain at the helm.
Chris Kofinas, Democratic strategist, giving up part of his Friday night to be with us. Chris, thanks very much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rachel.